So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amy to talk about those numbers.
Great. Well, I'm not as good as Chris McKenzie, but I'll do my best to fill in on his behalf. So again, my name is Amy OGorman. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I thought I'd just start with a little light anecdote. It was something I really appreciated. Is anyone here from San Diego? I doubt it, but I thought I'd check. Oh, okay, one person. Okay, so I'm just gonna relay a funny little anecdote that Mayor Jerry Sanders used the other day in his State of the City address. I think it's kind of funny. So, but I can't take any credit for this. It was all him. But anyway, he was talking a little bit about, the future of the state and the dysfunction in Sacramento and the fact that Sacramento has the power to balance its budget by stealing from ours, by stealing from local government. And I just love this. So as you know, as Paul indicated, the governor did release his budget 2 weeks ago, and he came up with this really funny scenario where he was talking about his household pets. So it was about a miniature pony, pot-bellied pig, and his family dog. And as the story goes, the pony and the pig have learned to work as a team. And what they do is they collectively work together to steal the dog food. And what I loved about Mayor Sanders' presentation is he said, so the governor and the legislature are essentially the pig and the pony, and local governments are the dog. That's the scenario. I just loved that. So I just had to use that somehow. And everything's been very, very somber today, though I think it's a very, very good discussion going forward. And I certainly think we're all ready to take action at the conclusion of this meeting. But anyway, I just had to share that. So again, as we have discussed all day, we have been consistent victims of Sacramento and have consistently had our local revenues raided. And I think the point also to be made is that we have been just as severely impacted by the economic downturn. Our sales tax share, our property tax share, all those local revenues have been severely hit, and we have been cutting services to the bone. So we've talked a little bit about some of the impacts, some of the actions that the state has taken. Paul talked about the $24 billion shortfall last year. We're looking at a combined mid-year and future year $21 billion deficit. We fully anticipate that will grow at the state legislature, and then also the controller, John Chung yesterday saying, oh, state's going to run out of money again. Groundhog Day. We're in the same scenario. So I fully agree with his assessment. So again, as various groups in the legislature intensify discussions about reform, again, I'm going to hit on some core principles we've already talked about today. Local officials feel very strongly that it is more important to protect protect our local revenues and stop these raids once and for all. But the other thing to point out is that voters strongly agree with that concept in all the polling data we've seen. The Public Policy Institute of California reported in a poll released in September that 87% of likely voters are concerned about the impacts that spending cuts have on local revenues. Reminders today of the governor and the legislature's very, very low approval ratings. One thing to mention is in internal polls I've seen, as well as in the PPIC poll, local government officials still have a generally very high approval rating. It hovers around the 55 to 65%, or some of the data I've seen. But what this demonstrates, in my mind, is a significant shift in voters' governance and fiscal priorities. So as voters' trust continues to erode, levels of trust remain high with local government. And I think that plays into the whole notion of more local control and more local protection of our revenues. So Chris talked a lot about our ballot measure today, and I appreciate the fact that he had an opportunity to discuss that. I was going to cover that, but I will skip that and just remind you that it was filed much like the other two. We filed in November. We're in the qualification stage, and just to sum it all up, it protects the constitutionally dedicated voter-approved revenues, so our property tax, sales tax, transportation revenues. So why should you support that measure and really the concept of local control and protection of local funds in general? There's a lot of reasons that we could talk about, but I'm just going to focus on a few. And again, it goes back to some of the voter sentiments that we're seeing in the polling. Jobs and the economy continue to top the list of voter concerns. In a field survey released just yesterday afternoon, approximately 8 in 10 voters, 79%, describe unemployment in the state as a very serious problem. And in a December PPIC poll, 6 in 10 voters cited jobs in the economy as the most important issues facing the state. Yet again, past raids of local revenues and even the governor's more recent proposal to swap the gas tax with an increased gasoline excise tax will only further destabilize local infrastructure funding and put California on the wrong track to reinvigorate the economy and really stimulate our economy. So that's a core issue that the League is really discussing at length. Again, we truly believe that where we go from here is investing and maintaining infrastructure. We feel that's absolutely critical, particularly in light of the sagging economy and as the state unemployment rate continues to rise. And that's something else that was reported yesterday. Unemployment is up 12.4%. I saw breaking news this morning indicating that translates into about 38,000 job losses in the month of December alone. Again, investing in infrastructure is one of the few and most immediate things government can do to boost jobs, economic growth, and state revenues in general. We need more money in state coffers, just like we need more money in local coffers. Just another statistic, our coalition partner on our ballot measure, the California Alliance for Jobs, which represents heavy construction companies and about 500,000 union construction workers, has estimated that for every $1 billion invested in infrastructure generates $5 billion in economic activity and 18,000 jobs. And yet the legislature's consistently rated and cut redevelopment funding and threatens transportation funding all the time. Another thing to focus on is safety. You know, safety is critical in a time like this, and you know, data recently compiled by the League indicates that you know, our measure, for example, would protect over $5 billion of city general fund revenues today that are dedicated by city councils to police departments from property tax, sales tax, and other locally levied taxes. It would also protect $1.4 billion in city revenues dedicated to fire and emergency medical services. And we're also doing some statistics for the county too, so we'll have those available. But everybody wants state government to be successful. The problem is that state lawmakers are making policy decisions in a system that is totally and completely dysfunctional. And the underlying dysfunction as it relates to the state-local government relationship is that local governments are no longer making their own spending and taxation decisions in their communities. The legislature is making it for you. Our measure, again, there's many out there, attempts to create a respectful distance between the state government resources and local government resources so those critical services don't get sacrificed as state lawmakers struggle to figure out how to run their government. One thing that Chris didn't say today, and he says it all the time, and it seems to really resonate when he's speaking to members of the public and city officials, is that you know, you don't get close to someone who's drowning, and the state is drowning. And we need to separate our local revenue streams from state revenue streams as best we can under the circumstances. In closing, and Paul also mentioned this, I need to emphasize that we truly believe that our measure, for example, is our #1 priority, but we also are very, very committed to long-term reforms. And this is the first step. There's a short-term dimension and a long-term dimension to this entire reform discussion. So we are in the short-term dimension right now with our local measure, and we are committed. We did this year just adopt many strategic goals, among them support reform of the structure, governance, management, and financing of state government. So to that end, again, the League is deeply committed to longer-term reform and to working collaboratively with other stakeholder groups to address those core governance issues that we talked about today. But the bottom line from our perspective is that we cannot engage in those longer-term reform discussions without making sure we as local governments have the stable revenues, local control, and accountability. So I again encourage all of you to get energized, get engaged. I think these are absolutely outstanding debates to be having. They're happening all over the state. And I can't emphasize that enough, and I think that the proposals that are being brought before you are outstanding ideas, and I really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you.